Good evening and welcome to the overnight edition of From Day One. Art Bell in his first episode back after the SiriusXM situation in Midnight in the Desert with Graham Hancock, coming to us July 20th, 2015. So here we go, part 2 of tonight's Midnight in the Desert.
Ask you a very controversial question. You're welcome to say no. The Bible, of course, is seen to be or thought to be a very historical and many would argue extremely accurate or totally accurate document. How much of the Bible do you think is the real Mccoy?
It should just be looked at as a repository of information from the remote past. And as such, there's no need for us to distinguish it from the incredible scriptures and religious ideas preserved in hieroglyphs by the ancient Egyptians, where those ideas often touch on the remote past of mankind, or the texts of the Sumerians in Mesopotamia, or for that matter, the ongoing tradition of Hinduism in India. Hinduism is based upon the Vedas, and the Vedas are lost books going back into the origins of the Vedas are really a deep mystery. What we're looking at in the Vedas is the latest recension of a very ancient oral tradition that may have been passed down for more than 12,000 years. And I think that's the case with the biblical text, with the ancient Egyptian text, with the Sumerian text as well. They're best looked upon as archives of knowledge. So I don't place the biblical texts any higher than the ancient Egyptian or the Sumerian or the Indian texts. I place them alongside those texts as a route into the past. That this is one of the ways, if you think of it as a wormhole in the fabric of space-time, that through these documents we can begin to enter and gaze upon and penetrate the mysteries of the past.
Well, I ask myself, Graham, all the time, how much of it I believe. And I do this because even relatively recent history, written supposedly, perfectly as it occurred, depends on who wrote it, whether they're the ones who won the war. And I mean, history is just, even relatively modern history comes out 6 ways from Sunday.
Yeah, no, totally. I don't think we should automatically believe anything in any ancient text. We should just use it as an aid in order to inquire into the past. History is a story, first and foremost. It's a narrative, and the biblical texts are a narrative, and they are written to support a particular point of view. But that doesn't mean that there isn't good stuff in there.
Oh no, there is. I mean, there's stuff that everybody knows is good. That human beings, I think, just know as a natural matter of being a human being the right and wrong way to treat somebody else, for example. So a lot of it is that kind of common sense, and you can believe it.
Yeah, well, the ethical stuff, is an aspect of all ancient texts. No harm in listening to that.
But Graham, I want to know: did the miracles really occur? Did the sea really part? All of that, I want to know, and we all do.
Yeah, I think that what is being captured in some of these accounts, again, it comes back to this issue of a technology that we don't understand. The faint hints and traces of some system of manipulating physical matter, which is not the system that we use today, and which appears to be miraculous, but is in fact an ancient science. I think that to me that's what it all comes down to in the end, that we're dealing with the fingerprints of an ancient science, and that this science goes back to a civilization before recorded history began. Now, I have to say that at the root of it all is mystery, not history. And when we seek to explain this, we should keep an open mind to all possibilities. Another possibility that many people like is the ancient astronaut.
All right, hold it right there. We're at a break point, and we'll be right back with Graham Hancock. I'm Art Bell.
Of course, welcome back. We will have our bell back in just a second. Any normal dead silent periods, unfortunately, is done due to YouTube's musical copyright system. There were 2 said in last night's period. Just so you do know, and kind of like, not that we're trying to be without you. The second, we can return Dart Bell without hitting that musical copyright strike, we will do so. Meanwhile, we move on to 33. Should be back with Art Bell in just a few seconds. No more than 30.
Via Skype, worldwide. If on a computer, please be sure to use a headphone mic and call MITD 51. That's MITD 51.
Oh, this just seemed the exact right time for this song. I fell in love with this song, and I don't know, somehow discussions of the Bible, Lost Ark of the Covenant, all of it, Graham Hancock, and it seemed just the right time for that song. Graham, welcome back.
Thank you.
Your new book, by the way, is Magicians of the Gods, right?
Yeah, Magicians of the Gods, not published yet. It'll be published in the fall, and it is the sequel to Fingerprints of the Gods. And when I say a sequel, I'm not referring to an update of Fingerprints of the Gods. This is a completely new book. 20 years have passed since I published Fingerprints of the Gods, and there have been enormous developments in the world since then, both in the field of archaeology and in the field of understanding what happened to the Earth between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago, which is the period I've always focused on.
In the book, I'm sorry to interrupt, the book, you suggest that a giant comet may have hit the Earth about 12,800 years ago. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, and that's not my suggestion. What I'm doing there is picking up on really extraordinary discoveries in science that have taken place in really since 2007. This is all very new information. We have a group of around 30 scientists from all around the world, from major universities and research institutes, who've been looking at what they call impact proxies. Now, this information has got out in a small way to the public, but it's never been put together into a coherent case that has a bearing upon the origins of our history. And that's one of the things that I'm doing in Magicians of the Gods, is I'm putting all of that information together for the first time. See, it used to be held that the last time we had a major, what they call a cosmic cataclysm on this planet was 65 million years ago. Dinosaurs, what they call the KT event, when what is calculated to be an asteroid about 10 kilometers in diameter smacked into the Earth in the Gulf of Mexico, created a global firestorm, destabilized the crust of the Earth, sent huge plumes of volcanic smoke rising into the upper atmosphere, changed the climate completely, and in the process rendered extinct the dinosaurs that had been the masters of our planet for hundreds of millions of years before that. Now, the view of science was that impacts on this scale, what you call extinction level events, are very rare. Now, they happen approximately once every 100 million years. Although how anybody could seriously expect the universe to be as predictable as that, I cannot imagine. Like every 100 million years, the alarm clock rings.
Yes.
But this was the view, and that while it is known that the Earth is in the path of small objects, meteorites, that they enter our skies all the time, little shooting stars, they light up, they're very pretty to look at. We don't feel endangered by these. They're the size of a speck of dust, and they're not going to do any harm to the Earth. Historians looking at the story of human civilization, anatomically modern humans like us, at least according to the mainstream view, are supposed to have existed for only the last 200,000 years, and civilization, according to the mainstream view, is only supposed to be about 5,000 years old. So if you're dealing with time spans of 200,000 years or 5,000 years, why need you concern yourself with time spans of hundreds of millions of years? This is the essential point of history. So history doesn't take account of cosmic cataclysms. And that's why, with this rigid view that the last one happened 65 million years ago, that we're not going to see another cataclysm for about another 35 million years, that's why history ignores cataclysms. But the group of scientists who I mentioned began to put together the information. They began to realize there were certain anomalies in the data. They began to realize that something horrendous had happened to the Earth much more recently than that, incredibly recently, actually just 12,800 years ago, at the beginning of an episode that geologists call the Younger Dryas. Now, geologists have been aware that the Earth plunged into a very radical climate shift at that time, 12,800 years ago, and they've been aware that there were extinctions which were associated with this time period, but they'd never put it all together. They thought the extinctions might have been the result of human activity, hunters, for example, hunting down the great herds of mammoths in North America. And they didn't realize that there might have been another cause for this, and that's what the new science has gradually revealed, that the Earth was hit 12,800 years ago.
All right.
And it was hit by at least 8 large fragments of a giant comet. And those fragments included fragments that were a mile in diameter. In other words,
this baby is circling around again.
Well, the point is that what all this comes back to is that the comet that was responsible for the cataclysm 12,800 years ago, the Earth has had several encounters with its debris stream. Those first impacts 12,800 years ago, and I'm summarizing, 8 or 9 years of really intense science here, which is thoroughly documented in the new book, that the first impacts were largely on the North American ice cap. This was the Ice Age. North America was buried as far south as New York in ice that was, 2 miles deep. This is why craters were not found, because those impacts on the North American ice cap were on the ice itself, and therefore the craters formed in the ice, and the vast heat initiated by these gigantic impacts. These objects are coming in at close to 100,000 miles an hour. The vast heat liquidized huge areas of the ice cap, causing enormous flooding. And part of my research with a fantastic catastrophist researcher called Randall Carlson, who traveled with me, we made a big journey across North America, across Oregon, across Washington State in particular, the channeled scablands of Washington State, unbelievable landscapes, the coulees, upper and lower Grand Coulee, these huge gouges in the earth. We now know that these features were caused by cataclysmic flooding at the end of the Ice Age, and the old explanation for that flooding just won't fit anymore. The only thing that really makes sense is the impact of several fragments of a comet on the ice cap. So I'm going to summarize very quickly. We have impacts 12,800 years ago. The science for it is impeccable, if not yet fully out into the public domain. Then there's another encounter. You see, what we're dealing with here is a comet that may originally have been 200 kilometers in diameter, a giant thing like the size of a small planet that is drawn in to the inner solar system.
That's really, really big. Just one quick question. I keep my ear to the ground on the internet, and these things come and go. I'm telling you, but there is this gigantic group of people right now that believe something like what you're talking about is probably pretty close to the horizon. They're talking even September. I don't have a clue. I just know there's a gigantic buzz about it right now. If you want to comment on that, fine.
Well, I can only tell you the science of it, which I've gone into in depth in Magicians of the Gods. I can only tell you the science of it. And what the science looks like is this, and let me just go back to this original scenario.
Sure.
That a huge comet enters the inner solar system about 30,000 years ago. It is captured by the sun, and it begins to go into an orbit that crosses the orbit of the Earth. It's subjected to all kinds of gravitational pulls. Comets are not as massively solid as asteroids. Comets are huge amounts of rock bound together with ice. And what happens with these gravitational pulls and the passage of time is that this giant comet begins to break up into fragments. Some of those fragments might be 20 miles across. Others might be the size of your fist. And it begins to form a debris stream. Imagine a huge donut spread around the solar system. That's the debris stream of this comet. And in it, there's lots of small stuff, which isn't dangerous, and there's a lot of large stuff, which is hideously dangerous. 12,800 years ago, we are hit by about 8 large fragments of this comet, with the epicenter of the cataclysm on the North American ice cap, and continent-wide wildfires across North America, and the massive extinction of what are called the megafauna, the large animal species of that time. World climate changes. Huge amounts of ice water from the ice cap have been released into the ocean. This interrupts the Gulf Stream, and it causes a radical fall of world climate, and we go into a deep freeze that lasts 1,200 years.
Actually, I believe Britain would be some of the first to go, wouldn't it? One of the first to go. If those ocean currents change, you guys are going to freeze.
Yes, of course, the Gulf. Many people don't realize what a huge role the oceans play in maintaining the stability of climate. And if you interrupt these great conveyor belts that take warm water from the equator and bring it up into the cold northern latitudes, if you interrupt that, then you don't just affect the Atlantic, you affect the climate of the whole world. Now, the mystery is that this episode, which began 12,800 years ago, ended equally suddenly 11,600 years ago. And the answer to this mystery appears to be that more fragments of that comet hit the Earth, that we crossed the debris stream again 11,600 years ago. This time the impacts were in oceans, most likely the Pacific Ocean, the biggest ocean on the planet.
Tsunamis?
Tsunamis for sure, but also a greenhouse effect. Huge amounts of water vapor are thrown up into the upper atmosphere, and this creates the perfect greenhouse conditions, which then explain why the Earth, in a matter of a generation, undergoes a warming of more than 10 degrees centigrade. And all of what's left of the ice caps just melt, and you have huge flooding. This is 11,600 years ago. The point is, I'm not a big fan of doom and gloom and cataclysmic scenarios, but I think we need to be aware of our cosmic environment. And the point is that the astronomers and other scientists who've worked on this say that the debris stream of that giant comet is still in orbit. As a matter of fact, it's well known to all of us. The Earth passes through the debris stream of that giant comet twice a year. And that debris stream these days is known as the Torrid Meteor stream, because it seems to come at us from the direction of the constellation of Taurus. That's an illusion, but that's why it's called the Torrid Meteor stream.
Well, Graham, I know that I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'll just finish this thought. The alarming thing is that calculations suggest that there are still many large objects in the Torrid meteor stream. Some of them are known, like Comet Enki, which is 5 kilometers in diameter. Others are theoretical, but when they backtrack the orbits of the meteor stream to the original giant comet, the inescapable conclusion is that there is at least one object with a diameter of 20 miles still out there and still crossing the orbit of the Earth every year. And it's really just a matter of luck. It's like crossing a 6-lane highway blindfold. We've just been crossing that highway twice a year and missing the traffic. But sooner or later we come into an area where the traffic bunches up, and then there is a danger of an impact. And some of the astronomers who've worked on this think that that danger is a real and present danger, and that it could confront us anytime between now and about the year 2040.
I wonder if we'd see it coming up. You know, we look for these things, Graham. We really do, amateurs particularly. But we might not see one coming directly at us out of the sun.
That's the problem. We're not looking for these things. Well, the amount of money that NASA is spending on the research for Earth-crossing objects is absolutely minuscule.
Yes,
and as to pick up on what you said, coming from the direction of the sun, we have no eyes on that at all.
Right.
And we're looking at a situation here where actually we as a civilization could prevent this cataclysm. There is no reason for doom and gloom.
If we saw it coming.
But we can see it coming. It's something that we should be taking an intense interest in. Instead of the petty squabbles that divide us all at the moment, the ridiculous wars over ancient religious ideas, which people have received as children and never questioned, the territorial conflicts, the greed, the stupidity, the hatred, the fear and suspicion being manipulated in society by the powers that be. If the civilizations on this planet were to put their heads together and say, all the evidence suggests that there is a real and present danger from the skies, what can we do about it? The answer is we could do plenty about it. There's no need for another extinction-level event.
Okay.
We have to grow up first.
Maybe we should be crowdfunding NASA, and just say, use this money, please, to find what may cause an ELA. Graham.
General problem. We need to stop having wars, and we need to start.
I'm with you, brother.
How to live in peace.
I know. The wars have got to stop. Hold it right there, Graham. We'll be right back. Graham Hancock is my guest, and this is Midnight in the Desert.
While we wait, that is actually Graham's current book series. Both of them he's talking about The Magician of the Gods and that's the other one, the Before America. That isn't the exact other book. But they do have both on here. Real quickly while we wait for the music to clear up that we can resume with Art Bell here. And of course we'll get back to Dominion in just a second as well. And there is the other one, Fingerprints of the Gods.
That should jog a few memories, huh? What is that, folks? Does that remind you of somebody? Michelle? Oh, yeah, Dreamland.
While midnight sweeps across America, you found an oasis for the mind. To call Midnight in the Desert, please dial 1-952-CALL-ART. That's 1-952-225-5278.
Actually, no need to call right now. We've got Graham on, and as you can hear, he's got a very great deal to say. So hang in there, and we'll get to your calls. But you might as well rest now. There's no point in everybody's dialing. I can see all the Skypes going, all the phone lines going. Just relax and listen. My guest is Graham Hancock, and here he is again. Graham, welcome back.
Thank you, Art.
All right. So, with all the internet rumor going on right now about something really gigantic coming, I cast these things off, but this one seemed particularly, I don't know, constant. The drumbeat of something, people feeling something's coming. I guess they always do to some degree, but.
Well, I just think that I think we have to take a different perspective on this. We live in a very dangerous cosmic environment, that's a fact, but we do not need to embrace gloom and doom, and we do not need to project a cataclysm upon ourselves. In other words, we do not need to manifest these things by dwelling upon them in some sort of extraordinary masochistic way.
That's true. But you mentioned wars, Graham. You mentioned wars, right?
Yeah, and
okay.
We need to take a practical position to living in a dangerous cosmic environment, especially when the scientific evidence, never mind about the cultic evidence all over the internet, when the scientific evidence points to a possible encounter with more fragments of the same giant comet that devastated the Earth 12,800 years ago, we need to take a practical view of this. Can we do something about this? And the answer is yes, absolutely, we can do something about it if we'll focus attention on it. And that's where I come to this issue of human behavior right now, because the world is full of hatred and fear and suspicion.
That's exactly where I was going, Graham. I was going to ask you, and this is a really, really critical, very important question. In your view, is mankind now any more or less warlike than we always have been?
I actually think that we are much more warlike than we've always been. I think it's getting worse and worse because the same atavistic, primitive urges that led to those bloody medieval wars with swords and spears are still at play. We still haven't grown up. We're still infantile, and we are now equipped with really dangerous toys.
Yes.
Which can cause absolute havoc and chaos in the world. Actually, never mind a comet, we're perfectly capable of wiping ourselves out, of taking this beautiful garden that the universe has given us to play in and turning it into a hell world. And we're in the process of doing that. And I can't help feeling that there are powers at work which are manipulating us to think in this way, which are pressing those primitive buttons in our deep reptilian brain and not allowing us to begin to think clearly and openly. If we thought clearly and openly, we wouldn't have a single nuclear weapon on this planet. They're just such deadly, dreadful, dreadful things. But, we do. If we thought clearly and openly, we wouldn't be allowing the destruction of the Amazon rainforest. Obviously, our society is just, a little bit insane, absolutely crazy, and behaving in a psychotic manner. And then, looming on the horizon, is the danger of cosmic cataclysm. And that's a danger if we were to pool our resources, if we were to work together, if we were to stop hating and fearing each other and actually realize that we are one human race, one family, all brothers and sisters, all with the same hopes, all with the same fears, and we don't need to fight each other. If we could take that line, then we could look at the challenges that face humanity, amongst which is the challenge of a dangerous cosmic environment, and we could do something about it. We could use our brilliant science for positive rather than negative ends.
Any idea, Graham, how we create that change in humanity?
I think that there is a change of consciousness underway. I am very aware of this. The internet is the key factor. The internet is an instrument for liberation. Dark forces are seeking to control it and to limit its liberating powers. But what the internet is doing is it's joining people all around the world into communities of ideas, not communities based on skin color or the religious belief that we happen to have been born with or of our ethnic roots.
Well, okay, that's the upside of the internet.
But to do with the communication of ideas. Now, I realize lots of negative things are happening on the internet as well, but this ability for people all around the world to communicate with one another instantly, to share ideas, and to expand those ideas is a great instrument for awakening. And I see that awakening taking place all around the world, and I see it particularly in the youth. It's small still. It's a small flickering flame, but it's growing. And, we reach a point of critical mass, perhaps soon the big corporations any longer. We're going to take matters into our own hands and make a better world. And I think that's coming. I feel very optimistic for that.
Well, I'm not as much of an optimist as you are, and while what you point out about the internet is certainly true, it is also teaching teenagers or encouraging them to, become radicalized, do something awful here, and or go to Syria and join up with the, bad guys.
Yeah, well, we have some bad guys on our side, too, if we're going to think in those terms.
Oh, no, we do. I agree.
I really don't want to think of myself as a member of a particular nation, I'm not, by the way, when I say that, I instantly realize there's a button that gets pressed. I am not in favor of one world government, okay? I am not in favor of any bloody government. I hate government is an old phase of human activity. Our next phase is going to have a much smaller role for government. So when I say that I don't see the point of nationalism, I don't see why I should automatically owe allegiance to somebody else just because they happen to be born on the same piece of land as me. I'm not arguing for one world government. Mm-hmm. I'm arguing for an awakening of the human species where we realize for the first time our full potential instead of allowing it to be harnessed and channeled and narrowed down by sectarian interests, which include, of course, death cults like ISIS. Yes, I can't bear the fact that hideous death cult has stolen the name of an ancient Egyptian goddess. It's appalling. But it is a death cult, and yes, it's using the internet. But many forces for love are also at work on the internet. So we have both sides.
Very quickly, you don't want a one-world government. You don't want really any government at all. What would you? As little as possible. Yeah, we have such little time here. What would you have?
I don't know. I just know that what we've got now is really bad, and it isn't serving the human race anymore. I don't think to recognize that we have to create a roadmap for the future. I think it's enough to say what we've got now is a broken model. It doesn't work anymore. It's allowing millions of people around the world to starve, to go to bed hungry every night. It's allowing the proliferation of nuclear weapons into dangerously irresponsible hands. It's allowing pollution on a gigantic scale to eat away at the lifeblood of the planet. I don't think I need to recognize the need for change. Once we recognize that exact direction the change will go will be up to us.
All right. Graham Hancock, hold tight. We'll be back to you. He is our guest, and this man has a lot to say. I'm Art Bell, and this is Midnight in the Desert.
Once again, due to musical situations, we will be back with the show once the musical concludes. Art has an eclectic taste, but some of them do get copyright restricted.
For Dark Matter News, I'm Leo Ashcraft. The owner of Jordan Lobster Farms said he can't bear to sell or cook a massive lobster that is nearly a century old. The crustacean is so big, employees are surprised by it, and customers would rather take pictures with it than eat it.
I've heard of these enormous lobsters, but I've never seen one, so it's a real treat.
It's humongous. That one, you have to kind of use your whole body weight to just lift it up, so that was crazy.
While it's difficult to tell a lobster's exact age, based on its weight and size, fishermen say this one is roughly 95 years old. Experts say lobsters at the deepest part of the ocean often live to be a century old. Owner Stephen Jordan is no stranger to large lobsters. Restaurant owners and diners routinely come to his wholesale and retail business for ones that weigh 5 to 10 pounds. But this one officially weighs in at a whopping 23 pounds.
We received it yesterday morning from one of our fishermen, John Price, who's in the Bay of Fundy. And he shipped it in. He didn't even tell us. He told us to look in the crate. We opened it up. It was like, whoa.
Jordan said it's been about a decade since he's seen a lobster this big. He plans to donate it to the Long Island Aquarium.
It's almost like a dinosaur, you know. You don't want to. You like to see it continue on. And I think they would take good care of it.
I think it's a nice thing for him to do, that the kids get to see it.
It's more cool to watch it and look at it than eat it.
The new movie Selfless, released this month, is a provocative psychological science fiction thriller. An extremely wealthy man dying from cancer undergoes a radical medical procedure that transfers his consciousness into the body of a healthy young man.
It will take a few days, but it gets easier. How's that new body smell? Death has some side effects.
Consciousness has been defined as individual awareness of your unique thoughts, memories, feelings, sensations, and environment. Your own unique consciousness lives in a series of brain cells or neurons, which, when fired in certain patterns, cause you to recall memories and emotions, even smells and sounds. A study conducted at UCLA by lead researcher Martin Monti used MRI scans to study how the flow of information in the brains of 12 healthy volunteers changed as they lost consciousness under anesthesia with propofol. They concluded that consciousness does not live in a particular place in the brain, but rather arises from the mode in which billions of neurons communicate with one another. So will it ever be possible to accurately map an individual's intricate and totally unique consciousness and upload it into another mind? According to ASAP Science, the short answer is yes. It will become possible one day. Scientists continue to research this field and have begun to locate the true storage location of consciousness within our brains. This is Dark Matter News. Researchers have discovered the world's oldest fossilized sperm. According to the new study, the cells date back some 50 million years. The sperm fragments were found entrapped in the wall of a fossilized worm cocoon in Antarctica. Sperm cells are rarely found in fossil record as they tend to be short-lived and have delicate structures that don't fossilize well. The research team from Sweden, Italy, and Argentina used a scanning electron microscope to look at the specimen's surface, which revealed the presence of the sperm cell fragments from a 50-million-year-old Clytolata. Researchers suggest that the sperm fragments are similar to that of a group of leech-like worms found on the shells of modern crayfish in the northern hemisphere, where they feed on dead organic matter. Further studies on the cocoon could reveal a great deal of information, which has been overlooked by paleontologists who tend to focus on relatively hard structures, like bones and shells. For Dark Matter News, I'm Leo Ashcraft.
And once again, due to mutual copyright restrictions with YouTube, we'll return to Graham, Art, and Midnight in the Desert within the next 30 seconds. Meanwhile, the battle is coming down to the wire.
Exclusively on the Dark Matter Digital Network with Art Bell. Invite you to call now. 1-952. Call Art. That's 1-952-225-5278.
Okay, that is the number, but actually we don't invite you to call just yet. So relax, sit down, relax, enjoy Graham Hancock. We're clear sailing all the way to the top of the hour. Graham, we're back on. Welcome.
Thank you, Art.
All right. Yes, there's so much to talk about, and I.
There is, yeah.
And
Thank you. Well, I'm just brimming with this stuff at the moment, because I spent the last 3 years working on this new book, gathering the evidence, putting it together. I try to make complex data, as accessible as as possible to open this up in a way that anybody can follow and understand. And in the process, I have to understand that data myself and really get on top of it. I think that's maybe the advantage of being a journalist rather than a scientist. I don't claim to be a scientist, and when the archaeologists call me a pseudo-archaeologist, I have to laugh, because I don't claim to be an archaeologist, and I don't want to be an archaeologist. I want to be an independent mind who's looking at the past. So for 3 years, I've been working on Magicians of the Gods. The book is now finished. It's at press. It's going to be published in Britain on the 10th of September. It's going to be published in America on the 10th of November. And if I can just do a little commercial, if anybody is interested, just go to my website, grahamhancock.com, and it'll immediately take you to a page where you can learn more about Magicians of the Gods.
You can do as much commercial as you want, no problem. So what are people going to say about this book? Are they going to say it's...
I don't know. I honestly have no idea. When I published Fingerprints of the Gods in 1995, I had no idea then what sort of storm was about to break over my head. I was really quite innocent and naive in this field. I had no idea how many toes I would be treading on, or how savage would be the reaction that followed.
Well, how savage for magicians? You might as well make your prediction now.
Well, I suspect it's going to be pretty tough, and so I'm having to brace myself for that. I'm like anybody else. I don't want to be hated. It's nice to be liked, and when people attack me personally, not just my work, not just what I say. But,
that's different.
The attacks on me, personal attacks on me, suggesting that I'm. I mean, there's just all kinds of ways that the debunking industry, those of us who are working in the field of alternative history and alternative science, are constantly subjected to this barrage of debunking. Now, I don't and can't object to that.
Well, look, if they move from the scientific, if they move from that over to your personal life or you, then it just means they don't know how to attack you on what you've said.
Yeah, well, it does, and that is a very common thing, unfortunately. And the argument is that those of us who are working in this field are simply exploiting a gullible public, and I reject that absolutely. I'm working in this field because I'm passionate about it. I feel that and I know that that's true of many of my colleagues working in this field. We feel passionate about it. We feel that there's information that needs to be shared and exposed about the past, and that's primarily why we do what we do.
All right, we've got to talk a little bit about the pyramids, just because so much has happened. As you know, I had my tour of the pyramids, courtesy of your old buddy Zahi Awast.
Yes, Zahi, good old Zahi.
Good old Zahi.
He's a great. He talks up a storm, though. He's a great talker, and amusing to be shown the pyramids by him.
Well, you're a great talker too, and I imagine if you two got together, it'd probably come to fisticuffs.
Well, we did get together in April, and it did kind of come to fisticuffs.
Really?
Yeah, I've got the links to that on my website as well. We had a debate scheduled, but the debate, Zahi at the last moment refused to participate and got wildly angry, and they really behaved in a very strange manner. But fortunately, some of it was recorded on mobile phone, and it's out there on the internet now.
All right, so Zahi got into some trouble. He got arrested. He was accused, I guess, of trying to get things out of the country, when I always thought Zahi had been trying to get them all back into the country. Do you have any comments on that?
No, I can't really comment on that. Okay. I haven't looked into depth in that. I'm more interested in Zahi's extremely negative impact on people's thinking as an archaeologist. That's really where I think he does the most damage. Is this championing of a redundant mainstream view, which he is now trumpeted as the world's most famous Egyptologist. He even has his own clothing line.
Oh, now does he?
Which he signs with the Zahi Hawass signature. He's got his own Indiana Jones hats. He's got his own safari suits. All of that, all of that kind of thing. He has become a very famous public figure, and he's an outspoken voice in favor of the mainstream view. In other words, that there is nothing mysterious in the past of ancient Egypt. And I think Zahi is doing all of us a disservice by spreading that view.
All right, I'm going to tell you what he did when I was there. He took me, of course I got to lay in the sarcophagus and all that stuff, but then he took me to an area where he showed me graves, he showed me inscriptions, he told me these are the people, the workers who built the pyramids, and it was pretty extensive. What do you think I was looking at when he was describing all of that and we were standing there?
Well, look, there's no doubt that there was a massive amount of construction work at Giza, quite apart from the pyramids. Giza is a gigantic construction site that's thousands of years old, where huge projects have been initiated and put underway. So certainly there will be workers' villages there. Certainly there were workforces there. Certainly we can find traces of those workforces. But were those the very workforces that built the Great Pyramid? That's another question. By the way, I'm not one of those who seeks to divorce the Great Pyramids entirely from the ancient Egyptians. I think we're looking at a very nuanced site at Giza. And again, I go into this in Magicians of the Gods. We're looking at a site, it's not a simple site. You know, there are two simplistic views of Giza. One is that it's all thousands to 12,000, 15,000, 30,000, hundreds of thousands of years old, or that it was made by aliens or whatever. I think that's a very simplistic view. And the other is the mainstream Egyptological view that it was made entirely by the ancient Egyptians in the period from 3000 BC onwards. I think both views are wrong. I think we're looking at a very complicated site. I think that elements of the site are remotely ancient, and other aspects of the site were the work of the ancient Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians saw themselves as the inheritors of and as the continuers of a very ancient tradition that had come down to them from the gods. Now, we may argue about who or what those gods were, but we can't argue that that's what the ancient Egyptians said. And they said that their uncanny abilities to manipulate stone, and the ancient Egyptians were brilliant stone cutters and stone carvers, were a legacy of the knowledge of the gods. So we can see the ancient Egyptians as the continuers of a tradition. And I trace that tradition back 12,500 years in such monuments as the subterranean chamber beneath the Great Pyramid. Of course, the Great Sphinx is more than 12,000 years old. And Robert Schoch's excellent geological work on the Sphinx going back to the 1990s has long ago made that case. The megalithic temples at Giza, the base courses of the Great Pyramids, but I think the pyramids themselves were completed by the ancient Egyptians, and I think they were using the same almost magical scientific techniques to do that job that had originally come down from a lost civilization.
Do you dismiss the ancient alien theory now?
You know, it's a very interesting and also complex issue, and I don't dismiss it entirely. Let me, if I have a moment or two, tell you my views on this.
Please.
I think there's no doubt that the universe is filled with life. I don't think that human beings are just the only kind of life form in this vast and immeasurable universe. And I think there's compelling evidence for contact with other intelligences, if you like. Mm-hmm. And I think there's compelling evidence that that contact takes place now and that it has taken place throughout human history. Mm. But what those other intelligences are exactly, that's not been settled yet at all. At the moment, we happen to be a spacefaring civilization, or we've begun to be. We've started sending spacecraft to the moon, even to Pluto. We're exploring our immediate cosmic environment.
Well, we've kind of started to back away a little bit, to be honest with you.
Well, yes, we have, but the notion is not new to us any longer. Since the 1950s, 1960s, we have been, the idea that planetary beings can explore their cosmic environment isn't a strange one to us anymore. It's something that we've done ourselves, and therefore when weird things happen and strange beings appear, and they may even appear to be in craft of some kind, we automatically jump to the conclusion that these must be visitors from other planets. Well, it could be more complicated than that. We shouldn't arrive at our conclusion before we've done the work. It could be that we're dealing, for example, that we're dealing with some kind of interdimensional connection. That this is much more mysterious and much more complicated than simply physical beings a bit like us crossing interstellar space in high-tech spaceships. Maybe what they're actually crossing is the veil between dimensions. Maybe that's why they're so elusive. Maybe that's how they can dip in and out of human culture. I have no doubt that something's going on.
Well, actually, modern physics backs you up on that.
Sure, it does. And, I think we're just beginning to realize how mysterious the nature of reality actually is. We're just beginning to get this thing we call reality that we access through our five senses is very complicated and multi-layered and deep and perhaps endless, and that there are many different levels of vibration and many different levels of quote-unquote reality, and that they all intersect and interact. So I think we should keep an open mind to what is behind the phenomenon that we are presently labeling as ET contact. I wrote a whole book about this called Supernatural, Meetings with the Ancient Teachers of Mankind, where I set out my view. There's no doubt that something's going on, but let's keep an open mind as to what it is. Now, when it comes to the ancient astronaut question, I can only tell you this, that I have spent 25 years traveling around the world's most mysterious archaeological sites. I've climbed sites. I've climbed the Great Pyramid 5 times. I've dived to the bottom of the ocean, looking at structures and ruins underwater. I've traveled the world for a quarter of a century, and nowhere, not in any single ancient archaeological site, have I seen something that could only be explained by high-tech aliens doing it.
By the way, this is only slightly related, but anything new on Yonaguni in Japan? Okinawa, actually.
Yonaguni was 2002. I haven't been back since then. And, in the way that the academic community does, they've just moved on and they ignore the fact that there are gigantic man-made structures under the ocean off the southwest islands of Japan. That's the case. My point is, all of these mysteries from the past, which I have really an intimate and detailed knowledge of, I don't need the kind of level of technology that you need to cross interstellar space in order to explain them. A much simpler, much more elegant explanation is that we are a species with amnesia, that there has been a forgotten episode of human history, that there was an advanced civilization in the past, and that advanced civilization, human civilization, lies at the source of all the archaeological mysteries, which doesn't do away with aliens and other intelligences. I would believe that civilization was in contact with them just as we are. But I don't think that those alien and other intelligences built the Great Pyramid. I think the Great Pyramid was the work of human beings.
And what do you think the purpose of the Great Pyramids would be? Multi-dimensional purpose, many things. But one thing the Great Pyramid is for sure is a gigantic instrument that works on human consciousness. You can see this effect at work in the faces of all of us who are drawn to the Great Pyramid. People come from all over the world. It's like a beacon, even in these troubled times in Egypt, and Egypt is going through very troubled times at the moment. That beacon reaches out and calls to us, and we all, so many people feel that at some time in their lives they need to make contact with the Great Pyramid. And let's ask ourselves why that should be. And I think it's because it works on humans. First and foremost, it was designed to elevate and accentuate human consciousness. Okay, well, this is the absolute truth my friend. I got to lay in that sarcophagus, and I felt something very powerful. I don't know if it was my own mind, sort of telling me I should be feeling that because I'm in this exotic place, but I felt something very strong. And
me too. I've also had the privilege to lie down in that sarcophagus, and if you tone in there, if you make a
yes.
mental note, it's just incredible what happens with the vibration around you. You can almost feel the veil between worlds thinning, and feel yourself encountering other levels of reality that you might never have imagined were there before. There are many ways to alter human consciousness, and I've explored quite a number of those myself. But the Great Pyramid is an astonishing instrument for developing, I would say, for enhancing the potential of human consciousness.
All right, I want to very quickly, because, time is so short, I want to ask you about this. The Arab so-called spring.
Yeah.
What to say about it? Are you fearing the possibility of the destruction of so much that could be destroyed in Egypt? I mean, God knows, we have no idea what's going to happen. Even Italy is being threatened as this disaster spreads across.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, in fundamentalist Islam, we have within it, there are many great people in Islam, but within fundamentalist Islam, there is a kind of death cult operating at the moment,
yes,
which hates the past. It cannot bear the past. Perhaps because it realizes that the past holds the key to unwinding the whole edifice of control that the mainstream religions represent. I don't separate Islam from Christianity and Judaism in this sense. Christianity, of course, has had to give way to the Enlightenment, but there are still fundamentalist Christians who would impose their vision on others, just as there are fundamentalist Muslims and just as there are fundamentalist Jews. At the end of the day, all these three religions worship the same God, Jehovah, Allah, Yahweh, whatever you want to call him. He's the God of Abraham. He's the same God in all cases. And unfortunately, I think the common point is fundamentalism. When people get so carried away with their beliefs that they're actually prepared to kill somebody else because of their beliefs, then you're dealing with a true psychotic. And unfortunately, these true psychotics are now in large numbers around the world, and they appear to be dedicated to the destruction of our past. So when I say we're a species with amnesia, it's not just because we've suffered cosmic cataclysms in the past. It's also because human beings again and again have deliberately rubbed out the past. Christian mobs used to do that in Egypt in the 4th and 5th centuries AD. You go around the Egyptian temples, you'll see many of the figures pecked out. Somebody's taken a hammer and a chisel and just pecked them out. Well, that was Christians who did that at a time when Christians were locked in the fundamentalist mindset. And this is what we need to free ourselves from if we're to move forward as a species. By all means, have spiritual values and spiritual beliefs, but never, ever, ever impose those values and beliefs on others.
All right. That's it.
When you do that, you're lost.
Right. Hold it right there. Okay. Graham Hancock is my guest. Can you imagine that? If those people ever got their hands on Egypt in totality. This is midnight.
And with that, we are going to have to leave that for tonight. Come back tomorrow night. We will have the final hour, which hopefully should have some calls for Graham with Art Bell. Till then, that will also bring us to a close for this, the overnight edition. As always, please make sure you do like, share, and subscribe. Get us to those 50,000 views, 1,000 subscribers. So Boxy over next year sends those nice red boxes for you. And of course, YouTube lets us get the algorithm. So until next time, like, share, and subscribe, be kind to one another, and release the Krakens as we march along here and every overnight from day one. Have a great night's sleep. We'll see you.